It's been a little while. What's up, guys? I'm back again. Rookie Critic, still around, still streaming here and there. I've got the script doctor, the script diggity doctor, and you can tell it's been a while since he's got a beard now. I just noticed.
Well, it's cold. It is freezing where I am in
Oof.
Canada right now, so I had to grow the facial hair to keep my face warm.
Oh, I imagine, yeah, the Canadian coldness. Oh, yeah.
It's brisk.
Winter hath come.
Yes,
Oh,
indeed. Yes,
oh
indeed.
yeah. Got your frozen maple syrup ready for the winter. All right. Now, that's the best Canadian joke I can come up with on top of my head.
You
Anyway.
gotta stockpile it, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So as we all know, Script Doctor, he's freaking worked in the industry with Hollywood, right? I figure that's most known about you around here. I would imagine a little bit. You want to, I guess, because our topic is somewhat about the tweets from the last few days from Chris Gore, and I'll show that in a sec. But I feel like a little context can make it a little more interesting with some of this. So
okay, sure.
Yeah.
So I am a professional screenwriter. But most of the time I find myself getting assignment jobs regarding like fixing plot structure, character, dialogue in movies. Some of those are Hollywood professional films and television shows. Some are independent films. Some are amateur. I take the jobs that I get, and I have a blast, working with people to make them the best they can be. And I've been doing this for close to 17 years. And it's a way of living. I really like it, and I clearly am doing well at it because again, it's 17 years. I must be doing something right.
Yeah, how many people stick at a job for that long? Honestly, that's a good time there, I would say. And that says that you do it well and that you like doing it. So
I do. I mean, I would love to have be able to run my own show or have a great movie franchise. It hasn't come in the deck for me yet. Either the stuff I write on my own is just not for the market, or people have some doubts, which is completely understandable. There's thousands of screenwriters out there that have great, brilliant scripts or really terrible scripts, and some of them get made, some of them don't. You just kind of have to sort of pay your dues, bide your time, and make your own career with whatever means you see fit. So, and that's just the nature of the game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to be a director at some point one of these days, and you've even helped give some advice here and there, which have helped me quite a bit in some of these areas.
I'm happy for that, yeah, because I've read some of your stuff and I like a lot of it. So you're on the right track.
Yeah, well, and it's funny too because I think some things that you gave me advice for didn't hit me at the time, but it hits me later. Some of the things, I think it was a passing by type of statement that was like, "Oh, it looks like you're trying to run before you can crawl," and it's just like a small thing. And then I look at it and I'm just like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm attempting to do all these things," and just going through some of these tweets in this thread here as well, like seeing examples. It's like I don't have the experience, but I'm trying to get it, but I haven't studied the craft well, and that's why I'm like. I get all these. I second guess myself all the time with things. I'm like, oh, I want it to be like this or like this, and it's not going that way. And it's like I need to take more time to actually learn bits by learn the littler things, learn other things, and learn details, and watch other things, watch other stuff that people have created, so I can get a better idea on what things are doing, and then maybe that help clarify my own stuff, which is
absolutely.
You said this, and I don't think it hit me hard enough before, but now it's been hitting me more lately. Where I'm like, man, I kind of just want to sit back and learn and research some things rather than keep on trying to go forward without knowing how to get to where I want to get to.
Well, with any new skill, with any passion, you kind of want to start small, just so they can get comfortable with the little things. Because as you progress, you're going to have more responsibility, have more goals, have more things to manage and execute. And with film, there's this kind of attitude, especially for like young filmmakers, that they have to make a really strong impact, and they don't see the forest for the trees because they're so excited, they're so happy to be doing something, and they try to shoot for doing something that is similar to their inspirations. And in most cases, it's like doing a feature film. Like they're first going out, they want to do a feature film. They think that if they do a feature film, it's going to impress the heck out of like all these people in the industry, and they'll be welcomed in, and you'll start making tons of other feature films on your own, making millions of dollars, and traveling the world, all that fun and glamorous stuff. But the sad reality is that that's not really the case. That's like a rare exception to the rule. The rule is if you really want to impress someone, you do something well that you can actually achieve. And a lot of people start by making short films. If you can tell a very short, concise story that's really like well shot, well acted, gets to the point, communicates quite well to the audience what is going on, that is actually really impressive because you're showing a form of discipline. You're showing that you have focus because you're keeping everything kind of tight and to the point. And as you get comfortable making those types of films, you can then earn your ability and practice to make things that are a little bit longer, a little bit more complex. And you just take the necessary steps that you feel comfortable doing once you feel confident with, the shorter form, and you just work your way up. And some people, it only takes a handful of short films to do. Some people figure it out, after doing it for short films for a number of years. Some people kind of pick it up like a savant and just they do one short film. I'm like, okay, I did a 5-minute short film. I'm going to do a 12-minute one next. After that, I'm going to do 20 minutes, and then so and so on and so on. And if they're really paying attention to what they're doing and they're taking all the new information and all the new experiences that they're gaining from each production, they will eventually hit that feature film point and really be able to execute that feature film as it is deserved to be executed, which is like, professional. Pacing is good. You're managing all the aspects that are required, and you're able to actually deliver, get it to the finish line, get it past editing, get it to a picture lock. All the finer details of post-production, because a lot of people forget that post-production is very important with making anything. It's very easy to shoot something, but to put it all together and package it so that it's watchable and someone will want to buy it, that takes a lot of work.
You can have all this footage, all this cool stuff, but there's that stuff afterward. How do you put that together? Where do they go? What are you doing with the camera? What are you doing with this there? Oh, there's a mistake there. How do you fix that? There's always a little, or this whole scene was unnecessary or something. It's like
exactly. Like you just gotta kind of figure that out. And that's just the nature of the game. And you look at any of the most prominent writers and directors in the industry that have a big following, you research their history. They started making, little short films, or at the time when short films didn't exist, like at the dawn of Hollywood, when mostly women were filmmakers and screenwriters, they were just kind of hobbling together, trying to figure out how it works. And so some of them, they had like serials that were like 25 to 30 minutes or so. Sometimes they had stage plays that they would film that would be anywhere from like an hour to an hour and a half, or up to 2 hours. And they're just trying to figure out their pacing at that point and what works best for this new medium, which when it was introduced was considered like low brow, low art, beneath the regular people, so to speak. Like, oh, you make movies? That's not classy. Theater is classy, or orchestral things are like, that's how it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So the whole creation of Hollywood was people in New York who wanted to do movies and also wanted to do stage. Were told, no, get out of here. You're a blight on what we've accomplished here. And so they went to the West Coast and they started Hollywood. And there were times where even male writers and male filmmakers would take a female pseudonym because they didn't want the bad reputation from the people back east to think that they were, making movies and lesser creatives. That was the stigma. And then that changed, like as people started watching movies and liking them and going to the movie theater. And then that stigma, was abandoned. And some women were pushed aside. Some were promoted to, producers and were running things. And it was very, very different industry than what one would expect, and has changed quite much over the decades as well.
Yeah, quite a bit. I would have liked to. I might want to research some of that transition between theater to film in general, because I never really looked into that type of aspect. But I mean, that when I think about it now, like the whole idea, people would get most of their stories from either books or from somebody telling a story in person, or like you said, through a play. And then it's like, well, how do you do that with the movie? With the movie, you have all these different elements to make into a film. And I mean, it's interesting too. Like, when I was trying to write some things for, like, out of high school, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to write a movie at some point. I'm going to write one and it'll get made or something. And it was just like, I in my head, I'm imagining a long movie. usually. Like I'm usually imagining a long movie, and
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about it like that now. But there's so many films these days that are like 2.5 hours or longer
Yes,
sometimes, and
yes,
it's
they
just
are.
like, and I never looked at it like, why are they that long? And it's like looking at it, it's like, wow, yeah, half this, this isn't needed. Oh, there's 3 minutes of a guy crapping in his pants. I don't think we need to have it that long. Like, if we're gonna cut down,
Sure. I mean,
or
there's
there's
things
Chris
that
Hemsworth
where
in Ghostbusters 2016. There's just little jokes that are like,
sure.
you don't need to have this go that long. You could go shorter. You can shorten it. That'd be good. This whole movie could be a short film, and that
In
probably
some
beats
cases,
best version. It probably beats best version. Who
in
knows?
some cases, like there's the old phrase "less is more," and that's very important to Hollywood because the thing is, like, you always want to leave the audience wanting more. There's another axiom, which is enter late and exit early. That's for like your scenes. So when you're writing a scene, you want to start as late as possible so that you're focusing on the conflict of the scene, and you want to get out as quickly as possible so that even if there is a resolution, that resolution either escalates the conflict or takes it in a different direction so that you can follow it up on the next scene and then keep the pace going in a more natural flow. And it all takes practice to do that. It's not something you can just pick up and do your first time out unless you're, again, a savant, and those are
Yeah,
very, very
those would
rare.
be. It's like the ones where like, oh, I'm going to drop out of school and I will be very successful. It's like, yeah, that I'm sure that does happen often. That's
Pretty rare.
Probably more these days. But I mean,
The
yeah,
attitude
out of the
happens
whole,
often, but the success is actually rather rare. Yeah.
right? That's what I mean. It's like
Yes.
where you're actually successful. You can have a living, sure, but like, what's the level of success you're trying to go for here, where you stand out with all this? And that seems to be more rare. So the tweet. So Chris Gore, I actually don't know his whole filmography here, but I know that I've seen him around quite
He's
often.
the
I know
ultimate
he's
film fan. He runs a film magazine in Hollywood called Film Threat, and it talks about independent film, professional film. It's been around for 30 years. He is like one of the ultimate film geeks.
yeah,
He's the guy that knows all the weird movies that you probably never heard of and provides
yeah,
recommendations.
he was on that show with Olivia Munn a
He was
long
on
time
Attack of
ago.
the Show.
Yeah,
He was
that's
one
what I
of the
know
better
him from.
parts of it.
That's what I know him from. Okay,
Olivia
yeah,
Munn was there because producers
yeah.
were enamored with her.
Oh
He had
yes.
the other guy there who was just to ask where's the HDMI and all the tech stuff, because that's all he did. And then you had Chris Gore who'd come in and say, "Hey, these are some DVDs coming out." I think he had DVD Tuesday, or
Yes.
DVD
Yeah.
Tuesday, because Tuesday was the day where that's where home video would drop. And yeah, he'd have some cool reviews and some neat finds on that show. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and so he put out this tweet. I'm going to show the screen right here. So Chris Gore, yeah, did this tweet that was, basically just saying normalize movies that are about 2 hours long, please. And
Yes.
and this is with, he does have a little context qualifier below it that says, yeah, movies being. Hold on, I'm gonna get my actual glasses on here. I'm gonna fudge it with that, but just with the one statement alone, I assume that's what most people are seeing compared to his, other tweet below here. I think that makes sense. Make it the norm to have
Again.
movies that are around 2 hours long. At first, I was like, well, they don't need to be around 2 hours. Was my instant thought, but then I'm like, oh, he says normalize it, like have that be the goal. That's what. Then I was like, oh, okay. And then he clarifies below: movies being longer than 2 hours unnecessarily these days has everything to do with actors slash executives and idiots and their egos insisting that this scene, line, set piece must remain in the film, when the truth is that if it were cut out, no one would miss it. Or I'd like to phrase that as it's non-essential.
Yep.
It's basically what that was. And
that's
then,
part of it. Yeah.
yeah. And then you kind of, put a little thing down here, a little genre to runtime average here that, they typically, would be. Or do you want to explain why that's how that
Okay,
is,
so
I suppose?
this is these runtimes are your goals, and these are the byproduct of decades of movies. So again, the film industry has started in the late 1800s. Didn't really become an industry until a little bit earlier in the 1900s. But We have over 120 years of film history in North America, at least. And what we have here are the genre goals. So with action, thrillers, and science fiction, your sweet spot that you want to go for is like an hour, 45 minutes. That seems to be the sweet spot. That seems to be the ideal length that the genre requires in order to effectively tell their story. For drama and fantasy, those are usually typically 2 hours. Dramas are usually like your romance or your serious more serious films. Fantasy usually has elements that are familiar to our world but require a bit more world building. So you are afforded that time to establish what the setting is and then run through your plot. And then you have comedy and horror. And with comedy, a human being, and I know this because I've worked with famous comedians.
You worked with human beings before.
Yes, I've worked with Joan Rivers, the Smothers Brothers. I've worked with people who are like Joe Flaherty, people from Second City Television, Dave Thomas, Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy. And comedy is sweet spot is 90 minutes because you can laugh for 90 minutes straight, and anything longer, your face is going to hurt, or you're going to realize like the jokes are not going to land as much because they're just dragging on. Horror, the same thing. You can be scared for 90 minutes. Anything further, you're probably going to have a heart attack if they keep doing it. I'm being a little hyperbolic there, but that's usually like the sweet spot. And these are just the goals. And it doesn't mean you have to, hit exactly that. You can be a little bit shy, or you can be a little bit over, but that it should be your goal. And if you can't achieve that, if you keep on going over by excessive amounts, then you're clearly not focusing on the story. You're focusing on the bits that make up the story, and maybe prioritizing something that's not relevant, as Chris Gore has said and as many other people have said. But if you have practice hitting those targets with your films, either starting in short films or television or TV movies or what have you, and you have practice and you get really, really good at that, then you know how to navigate a longer runtime better, so that when an audience is watching it, they don't feel like it's a long movie. I mean, we all have seen those films where it just blows by really fast, and you're like, I can't believe that movie was 2.5 hours. It did not feel like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's the kind where you want more of it, even though it was so long. It's like, why isn't there more? When it's done.
To a degree, like you can
take I'm sorry, or you go, I'm satisfied, I'm finished. That was great.
Here's a great example. True Lies. What's the runtime on True Lies? How long is that film? It doesn't feel like it's a long film, but it is.
That's the Arnold Schwarzenegger one, right? And
it's the Arnold Schwarzenegger with Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah. It's 2 hours and 21 minutes. That's a normal edition. There's an extended one I think is like 2:30. But it doesn't feel like 2 hours and 21 minutes. It actually feels like a little bit over 90 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, from what I remember. Yeah, and based on like the plot beats in it, yeah, I would almost guess it would be like under 2 hours is what I would think.
But it's not. It's a little bit over. It's by James Cameron, who he's something of a savant to a degree. True Lies is an adaptation of a Russian film, if I'm not mistaken. But he didn't open his film career with True Lies. He did Terminator. He worked on Piranhas 2, despite his currently claiming now that he never really directed it. I know people who worked on that set. He directed it. But he learned a lot from that and allowed him to become a much more prolific director today because of that. Because he made Terminator. He did Terminator 2. He did The Abyss. He did True Lies. He did Avatar. He did Titanic. He figured out how to properly direct and pace a film and work with screenwriters to make sure that if he's going to tell a story that's going to be, outside of the general, parameters that the industry has kind of supported and said, yeah, these are probably the most best ideal target times for these genres. He had to make sure that it was worth it. And it reflects to a quote by one of the most famous directors in the industry, Alfred Hitchcock. And that quote is, "The length of a film should be directly related to the endurance of the human bladder." Because what do a lot of audience members do when they go to movies? They have popcorn and soda. And if you're eating and you're drinking.
Well, so actually, I'd say that holds up specifically for movies in a theater, I would say. But that's actually something that's been in question, I'd say, in the last, in the modern times with streaming being available, where let's say some films, like let's even say that like The Godfather wasn't
Sure.
released in theaters. Let's say it was when it was made. Let's just pretend streaming was around. It was released direct to streaming or direct to DVD, and it wasn't
Sure.
released in theaters. Like, should the rules still remain in the cinema as if it were going to be in a theater kind of a way, or not? Like, that's something I think some
Because
people
it's nearly
question these
3-hour
days.
film, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, here's the advantage with streaming, and with streaming you can pause to take breaks and you can watch
Right.
things at different times, and it's kind of like translating it to a book. Like you can read a book in either one sitting, or you can read it chapter by chapter, day by day, whatever pacing you want. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the other part too is that over our species history and telling stories, we have figured out that there is kind of a certain natural length based on the content and the quality of what is being told.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it's never set in stone, of course, but it's just guidelines. They're just goals, targets to reach. Not everybody should be writing, War and Peace by Tolstoy, which has got like 1,000 characters, and it's
Oh my
not
God.
one
What?
big story. It's an
Oh my
event.
God, I don't even know. That'd be possible. 1,000 characters.
Well,
I don't even know if Lord of the Rings. Does Lord of the Rings
sorry,
have
not
1,000?
1,000, 100 characters. 100
Okay, I was
characters.
going to say, does Lord of the Rings even have 1,000 characters? My
Well,
God.
if you read everything within the universe,
What
yeah, they
I'm
do.
talking about in the films specifically.
Well,
Like
Lord of the
for a
Rings is
film.
another example, which I'll get to in a moment. But like, for instance, War and Peace by Tolstoy has over 100 characters, and it's an event. It chronicles an event, but it's a bunch of little stories with all those characters that intermingle and intertwine to a degree to tell that story. So it's partitioned, and cleverly so, to a point where a lot of people who do read it, and there's not a whole lot I think today that in our generation that would, because it's a tome, it's a very long book, wouldn't quite pick up on that right away. But then, yeah, going to your point with regards to Lord of the Rings, the best adaptation we have of that is Peter Jackson, and he left a lot of Lord of the Rings that's in the book out of the movie specifically because his skill set, or maybe he just knew that an audience is going to only tolerate so much, no matter how beautiful and how amazing, what the content he could put in that film could be. The diehard fans will tolerate it ad nauseum, which is great. Fine for like guys like you and me. If you want, I want to do a whole day just watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I can do that, and it's fine.
Yeah.
But the average audience member, sometimes they can't, and you have to consider them as well. And the other thing to remember is that Peter Jackson was an experienced filmmaker by the time he was pitching for Lord of the Rings. He also pitched Lord of the Rings as a 2-film epic. So all 3 books to be done over 2 films, which means that it would have been probably shorter than the trilogy.
Oh wow.
And so he was thinking, economically on story wise. It's like, okay, I only have so many, like I've got this epic story. I think I can do it in 2 films, and I think I can do it justice in 2 films, and this is how I want to do it. And he went to New Line Cinema and Bob Shea. He pitched Bob Shea, and Shea liked the pitch, but he paused for a moment and he said, Lord of the Rings is 3 books. And Jackson's like, yes. So Shea's response was, well, why don't we just make it 3 movies? And all of a sudden you get another 2 hours-ish to play with. Right?
Right,
So
which for some that would be like, oh my God, how am I going to do 2 more hours on top of the other 2 hours essentially?
Well, given the source material, it's like 2 hours. It's like, okay, great, I got 2 more extra hours. Now, what do I put in those 2 more extra hours?
For adapting something, okay, you're right. Yeah, for adapting it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for an adaptation, that's fine. For a completely brand new IP that you're making, and someone's like, yeah, we want 3 of them, and we want them 2 hours each. Is like, I definitely have a story for 1. I don't know if I have a story for 3. Like, we got the most recent Disney Star Wars trilogy as a reference point for that. Yeah. But yeah, like it's just a target. And the fact of the matter is that anyone who tries to counter that target with various movies that have, exceeded those lines, they've all been made by filmmakers who spent years learning their craft and practicing how to tell stories in a slightly longer form. And they do it by being experts at the more concise stories. So Steven Spielberg, he started with short films, then he did TV, and then TV movies, and then did features. And he's one of the most powerful and influential filmmakers of our time. Same with Francis Ford Coppola.
Hold on. I'm trying to think if I can stump it. So I don't know the history of Quentin Tarantino and his stuff. He's the one who does.
Quentin Tarantino, I know a bit about.
He's the one who's done like 9 films, right? And that his goal is to reach 10, right? Like he's directed, or
has he done 9 or 8 films? I thought he did 8 right now, because Kill Bill is technically 1 film, volume 1.
I forget how people count it. I don't know.
Well, it doesn't matter how people count it; it's how Quentin Tarantino counts it.
Well, right. I think he counts that as one.
I think he does
because he would have made it 1, but that'd be a long movie, and so he made it 2 essentially. Which kind of fits right into our conversation here with that anyway.
Like,
I do like that it is 2 films. If I were to be asked about it, I'd be like, I don't know if I'd want to go through all of that in one. If I were in a theater, I guess that is what would come up. I'd be like, I don't know if I'd want to sit through all of that in one sitting. But if I'm at home watching it, that'd be fine. But then that kind of gets around to this, like with any film that comes out, it's not going to be in theaters forever. So I guess why should it be made to be confined within a theater sometimes? Like with that type of runtime, I suppose. Like because like if people can pause it, because at some points like Terminator and all these Avatar, Lord of the Rings, also like they're all on DVD now, or they're all available to watch at home now.
Movies live at the home, yes. They debut in the theater, but they survive and endure at the home. Yeah.
Yep. And so I guess the whole thing is that your main point and you keep on going back to it, which is what these people in the thread of the Twitter here seem to not understand, is that you're just
only some. Most of them get it.
You're mentioning a goal, like the goal to strive for should be that 2-hour thing before you start trying to do longer ones. Like Chris Gore, I assume Chris Gore was mentioning this tweet in the first place because of like the Eternals and other movies that are out right now that are really long, I assume.
Yeah, like the Eternals, unnecessary long. I'd even argue Infinity War and Endgame are longer than they need to be.
Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Zack Snyder should not even be directing. He should be doing like assistant directing and special effects. He's way better at that than he is trying to do camera, like talk to actors and navigate story.
I like the scene in Justice League where they walk upstairs to hardcore music. It's like, and they close up on a sesame seed. We don't need this.
So here's the other thing too. For Zack Snyder, he'd been trying to make a feature for years, but the best he could get is music videos.
Really?
And there's a reason for that. And out of desperation, because James Gunn had written a remake of Dawn of the Dead, the studio just needed someone to direct it. They just picked Zack Snyder. And he did a great job with that movie because he had a very solid, tight script, and he knew how to execute it well. And Zack Snyder did a very smart thing, which is that he used that credit and that well-paced film to allow him to experiment in other stuff. So he then did 300, which he was able to piggyback off of Sin City, which was Robert Rodriguez's shot-for-shot remake, or shot-for-shot adaptation of this book of the same name. Yeah. And he just kind of built his career that way, and then did Watchmen, and did Sucker Punch.
300, out of all the films I've seen of Zack Snyder, 300 I think was his most concise out of all of them, where it's like he shows the majority of what's important, and it's within a decent
300 is a very short book, so he had to expand it.
well, regardless, like compared to his other films anyway, I feel like he left in the most substance compared to the runtime, as to where with the other stuff, I feel like there's like the other things he's done, I feel like there's a lot that's like, do we need to have this all to go on? I don't know. Like even Man of Steel seemed like,
Man of Steel was a drag. Yeah,
like I feel like this whole concept is fine, but it just there's so much that doesn't need to be here that I'm annoyed that I'm watching this. That's what I feel, and it's like, if this was just trimmed out a bit, if these parts were cut down, then this could be a more watchable thing here, a little more better experience. And I'm learning about that as well. And I haven't seen the Eternals, but I assume that there's just lots of just meandering scenes where people talk can be good if it helps anything. But if it's just, hey, there's a huge universe thing that gave birth to seeds of giant galactic thing. At some point your brain probably goes, what are they doing? Like, what's going on? I imagine. I haven't seen the films. I don't know if that's.
I haven't seen it yet either. There's nothing in the advertising has made me want to see it, and that's that's not necessarily 100% the fault of the director. It's also the studio and their ad department as well. They didn't do anything tantalizing for me to have to see this film, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
but yeah, for like Tarantino, if you want to get back to him a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go back to Tarantino.
So Tarantino started with short films. In fact, Reservoir Dogs was originally a 12-minute short film. That's how he pitched it to get the feature.
Okay.
So he started small, and Reservoir Dogs, I think, I mean, it's. Let me just double check. Reservoir Dogs. Because I haven't seen it in a few years, but yeah, it's an hour. Yeah, Reservoir Dogs is an hour and 39 minutes, and so that's within your action, within 145. You know, that's a good target. He hit it. Now, here's the other part, too. So Tarantino, when he started, had a really awesome editor, whose name is escaping me at the moment, but I'm just going to look it up right now real quick. And she just helped him refine a lot of the stuff that he needed in his film. Like, she was there, I believe. Cecilia. No, that wasn't Cecilia. Crap. Sorry, there's a lot of editors on his film. I'm just trying to remember the name, but she'd been with him for a long time. She passed away, and she passed away, I think, around Kill Bill or just before. She was sick, and since then, Tarantino's films have been a lot longer.
Yeah, which I think in some cases help it. You know, if they're shorter, it's like, oh man, why is this not there? Or we could have had more time with them. I mean, the one scene in Inglourious Bastards, which I honestly don't like the film overall, but there's two scenes in it that are like some of my favorite I've ever seen before, that are so well. The first, I think it's the first scene with the Nazi and the guy who's hiding the Jews, and then later when they're in the bar with Michael Fassbender in that scene, like those ones, they're very long scenes, and for just not much going on, but there is a lot going on, and just that little bit, and like those are done really well. Those were done really well. Like as you would say, they're refined. It's perfected pretty much. They've earned the ability to make them that long.
Yeah. So okay, here. Sorry, I found. I just want to make sure it's the right one. It was Sally Menke. She passed away in 2010. So the last thing that she worked on was Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. And she technically also worked on Inglourious Bastards as well. That would be the kind of like the last part there. And boy, and yeah, so she passed away, and she was kind of like, you know, the divining rod for Quentin Tarantino, making sure that this stuff was, you know, good, as it should be. But when she passed away, we got longer films. So we got Django Unchained and the Hateful Eight, and those are really long, and they don't need to really be that long.
Yeah, some of those probably could have been a little chopped, a little trimmed down a little bit to.
There's definitely places you could cut. Yeah.
I mean, but I haven't seen either of those, so honestly, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Okay, that's fine.
Of course. But so that actually goes back to like even George Lucas. When people look back at Star Wars, I mean, I assume
Star Wars is like right around 2 hours. Like it's right in that sweet spot.
But the whole thing, the whole stigma or the sayings about it, at least from what I hear all the time, is that his wife edited down a lot of what it was going to be. It was going to be longer or something, but that. I don't know if it's misinformation that I hear sometimes through hearsay or not.
No, Marshall Lucas recut the film with Richard Chew and another guy. And so originally, like in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker did the trench run twice. He missed the first time, just like the Red Leader did. And then he had to go back and do it again. And Marshall Lucas was the one that said, no, we can't have Luke go back and do it again. We should make him succeed in the first time out. And then Lucas's argument was, well, I want to show that, you know, when he doesn't use the Force, he fails, but when he does, he succeeds. And Marshall's like, the audience is going to pick up that he's not going to doubt Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's going to believe in him. And she ended up being correct. And for that scene is more impactful. And at the other part too, she's also using the old technique, which is the rule of 3. You can do something once, you can do something thrice, but if you try to do it twice or 4 times, it's not going to have the same impact.
That's true.
And that
Which
is,
I'd say
and
that's
that's not a
another.
rule someone arbitrarily made. That is just a byproduct of
That's
experimentation
over time when things trial and error things happen and you get the most positive results you can see. It's how you discover what facts are, essentially. Right?
Yeah, you run an experiment, and if the result keeps on becoming the same, then that experiment and that result are connected. And unless you find a new observation or new information to use into that experiment that will then change the results, then that is, the norm, and it's ever evolving. And those factors could also change with streaming. Specifically, we are seeing a different type of story being told, and in different manners, different pacing, and different lengths, because you have the comfort of it being like a book traditionally. Like, you can pause it, you can put it down, you can go back to it later, you can pick up where you left off. You're not out in a theater in a constrained amount of time, a distance from your home, with possible bathroom requirements
Right, you're all
there.
good from the get-go, pretty much.
Yes, you have more control at home than you do outside of your home. And but at the same time too, like, a lot of people have said, oh, I want to do this 5-hour movie. Well, when you really think about it, you can either watch it in 5 hours, which is fine, or when you really think about it, most people will pause or take a break from it, which means that it's really more like a mini series in a single setting,
It's
in
like
a single sitting form.
there'll be a point where you are going to pause it, and that's probably going to be around the 2-hour area, most
It could be
likely.
around the half-hour area, it could be around the hour area, the 90-minute area, or 2-hour. It's up to the individual user. But the
Yeah.
fact that they're going to pause it further goes back to the little guidelines that I put in my
Yeah,
tweet. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's like it makes sense again to stick to that type of thing, and if you're gonna make it, more than one thing, then maybe your tale can be told in two stories. I mean, aren't there some? I'm trying to think of ones off the top of my head, but like, I guess the Lord of the Rings is the closest, where it's like a consecutive story where like it seems like it picks up right where the other one left off, essentially, and like I'm trying
well, I
to.
mean,
Well,
you're gonna find that more
some
so.
meaning. Some
You're gonna
people would say it's like that's a 10-hour movie or something, but it's
to a
like, well,
point.
no, it's split up in 3 parts, so it
It is, yeah.
flows better.
It's split up in 3 parts for its own individual flowing. But if you want to take a look at that type of thing where it picks up where it left off, you have to go to like TV miniseries. For instance, you have V, the series. So like that's a miniseries and also a single season television series. The miniseries is 3 90-minute films made for television, and they pick up back to back right where they left off. And then after that, it goes into 24 episodes of hour-long television. And it's a complete story. It's a very long one, but it's consecutive, and it fits within a format. And the other part too, you also have to realize, is that if you are watching something that is, say, 5 hours, and you don't realize it's 5 hours, that is just a master of storytelling. Like that's it. Like, you're sitting in one spot, and it's a master of storytelling. You are fully engaged. You don't have to go to the washroom. The rest of the world just kind of fades away, and you are completely enamored with what you're watching. That is expertise storytelling, and that is also a rarity for that type of length. But for, again, as we mentioned earlier, for anything that's like 90 minutes, 2 hours, or 2.5 hours, and if it's well paced and well told, and it doesn't feel like that, that's masterful storytelling. And how do you get to become a masterful storyteller? Well, you have to understand the value of time with your story, and to do that, you have to practice, sadly, small. Just like with archery, if you want to hit the bullseye, you don't start from 200 yards away. You start from maybe 10 feet away, and then you
Same
get good at
with
that. And then you
basketball.
step.
It's a similar thing.
Yeah,
You're not going to start from the 3-point line. Typically, you're going to try to go a little closer first and
start with a
get your
layup,
shot.
just so
So you're
you
gonna,
understand the
yeah.
functions of the ball, the board, the net.
When
And then
you start the alphabet, you A B C D E F G. You always start with baby steps before you
and
learn
then you
everything.
work your
So
way up, and you slowly work your way up and get better as you
yeah,
progress and practice. So, like, if, say, you can always sink the basket at the 2-point, the 2-point guard. Great. Okay, so you go to the 3-point, you try, you miss. Okay, maybe I have to get a little bit closer. So you try there, you miss. You get a little bit closer, you try there, you nail it. You stay there, you practice until you keep nailing it. Then you go back at it further. Then you go and you do the process over and over again until you get it. That and the other part too, and what shocked me from some of the negative comments, was the fact that people were looking at at my statement as if I was saying it's a curse or it's evil or despiteful to suggest that people earn a skill. Like they just can't,
Yeah, well,
pop out of the womb and all of a sudden start talking philosophy.
I saw some of them saying like, if you put these rules, then we will get cookie cutter stuff, or that you'll restrict the creative process. And it's like, in my head, I'm like, well, no, what do you mean? It will be more. I think it helps guarantee a better outcome out based on, like you said, 100 years of this happening, where there's been all different types of lengths of films and everything, and people working on them for a certain amount of years and gaining that's what you mean. Like, there's been 100 years now. We have
the data that shows the opposite. And the other part too is that there's no such thing as restricting creative. If you're creative enough, any type of obstacle you face is a challenge to just get around creatively. It's like, a kid who has construction paper, glue, and scissors, and that's it. And it's like, well, what are they going to make with that? Well, if they had plastic and a 3D printer, they can make anything. It's like, well, no, they don't have that. And they don't need that if they want to make something cool. You don't just give a creative everything they need, because they're not going to be creative. They're going to have something derivative as a result of it. Creativity comes out of scarcity to a degree.
Well, it's like I think it's out of risk. It's out of what are you going to do? You're committing a certain amount of time and effort and money and resources, favors, whatever, into trying to make something here. And there's so many different elements that you have to account for, and people that you have to trust as well to be able to do their part in helping this come to be as well. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to go in there, and I don't know. I feel like having some type of like you said, a guide to do it well, make sure that you're going to have less failures. To me, it's the simple thing of learning from the past in a way. It's like people have tried to go really short or really long and done really bad, and there's just they tend to not work out as well. If you can repeatedly make a film around a certain length and have it all be substantive pretty well or received well, whatever, well, yeah, maybe you'd have better luck at it. I don't know if there's any examples either of like filmmakers that have done well in the 2-hour range and then tried like a 3-hour or longer type of story and done poorly. I don't know how many. Do you know how many bad long films there are? Never mind. That's a dumb question.
They're harder to find.
Never mind. Well, I'm gonna say like nowadays, as they make more that are longer than
aside from Zack Snyder's Justice League cut,
I'm like, oh no, I don't know. Like I feel like nowadays though there are becoming more that are like in the 2.5 to 3 hour, like unnecessarily longer films.
Well, you can shoot on digital now, so you don't have the limitations of film and film development and processing.
That's actually another point that I didn't even think about, was that they literally had physical limitations of what they can film like on their film,
and yet we still got great movies. It just proves the point that you can't, there's no such thing as restricting a real creative. A real creative will be like, okay, I have $300 and I want to make a short film. And a bad creative would be like, I can't make a short film for $300. It's like, then you're not a creative. You're a fraud. Like, you're just not. If you're the one that are imposing a limit on you, a creative doesn't look at obstacles like limits. They're like, okay, this is a challenge. This is something to figure out. It's like, this is all I have. What's the best I can do with that? And it also shows discipline and responsibility, which creatives have. I mean, you can't conflate a creative with regards to like filmmaking with someone like a painter who's like, the world's my canvas. It's like, okay, so you're going to be graffiti all like around public places and streets and buildings and whatnot, or you're going to buy a canvas and make something there.
I'll put 3 circles together and splooge on it a little, and then be like, oh, look at this. It's like, oh, well, I mean, or you could go based off of something.
Sure. I mean, again, there's people that they just want the fame, but they don't really value the art itself. And that's their prerogative. But
it's funny because like I was thinking back when I was trying to share with you some of my ideas for things and talking, and you were breaking them down, and like I was giving you my outlines that were like paragraphs long for the outlines of scenes, and you're just like, okay, but like, can you even summarize what you want here? And it was like, okay, because I I pretty much just had all this stuff. I had like a kid out of a candy store. It's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
look at all these things that I can do. But it's like, okay, now refine that. And
Yeah,
now
get some
refine it
focus in
again and refine it again. Do you need to have a scene where they go to the bathroom? Probably not. Do you need to have a scene where they say this and are having this happen that does this? Or can you maybe jump to here? Does it have to start at this point? Or this seems to be where the stuff's happening. Does that need to be there? I don't know. And it's like, these are questions like, okay. And then you start to kind of understand the idea of a goal and of things to keep in mind. And it's like, can you see, like when I saw the can we normalize movies being around 2 hours? My first thought was, I mean, I think, some films that are short, like 12 minutes, like I'd love to see more substantive, like 12-minute films, like if they can, like I don't know how often like filmmakers make short, like that have already gone through years of experience, ever even try to do a short one.
Some do.
Like that's it's like the only one I guess that I've seen as of recent was like Laundry Day. That has
Punisher the Thomas Jane Punisher thing.
That was just really short, and it's just like, man, that was just like that's a
you want more
filmmaker
of
who
that,
just
right?
set up a scene. Well, it's not just all that it was violent either or anything, but it was like you set the scene, the tone. It's just like, it's like 8 minutes long or something, and it was like that was just nice to see. Like I can see the character through that little short, through an 8-minute thing. I can tell a little bit about this guy, even without knowing his family, all that stuff. But still, that was good. And if again, like you said, if you can perfect that, then maybe try something longer and keep it, good, and then you can go up and up and up. It seems so simple, but so many people.
I mean, it's like with any skill, like with weight training, you don't want to bench what Schwarzenegger benches as your starting point because you'll kill yourself.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger's prime was doing like what 250-pound bench presses. But if you want to, get into shape or be a bodybuilder, you got to start small. Your muscles are your muscles. Like you have to train them. They have to be broken a little bit so repair and get stronger. And so you cannot start with 60-pound dumbbells doing bicep curls. It's not going to work.
We're in a generation of people that are, among my peers and, everything where it's like, hey, that person's really successful. I want to be right there. I don't want to work.
You want to start at the finish line. Yeah.
I just want to be right there though. No, but you have to do all this work and time and effort. Can I just be over there? It's like, essentially seems to be like, and like the first response, this response is like, if you stick to the formulas 100%, it'll never get made. That's your goal, though. It seems just like,
well, first of all, he doesn't even understand formula.
Yeah, I'm like, oh,
and on top of that, formulaic films. I mean, the best films follow the same formula. The problem is that you, as an audience member, they're so good you don't realize they're following the formula. It's not a factor. It's not being told to you.
That's actually what I was going to say. Like I've seen things happen many times in certain ways, but I used to get annoyed like if hearing, oh, it's going to be this type of film, but now I'm like, well, actually, I'm okay if it's that type of film because they'll do it differently. That's usually the thing.
It's about making it the flow. Like the formula is just basically beats, not necessarily 100% specific, but certain things
like
that
revenge or
it's the goal,
hero's journey or whatever.
Sure, you can do the hero's journey. You start in a place of normalcy. Something happens. The hero decides to take an active measure to fix that. They don't know all the details of this new world. They then fail, thus learning how this new area of the world functions. They try again, and with that new knowledge, succeed. Then they come back to their hometown having changed. Like that's your basic stuff. That is not a bad thing to have in a story.
Yeah,
it still leaves anyone who's looking at that formula millions of different ways they can execute that for their story.
Yeah, which is why Avatar, going back to Tarantino for a sec, or he did Avatar.
No, Cameron
right?
did Avatar.
Cameron, sorry.
That's okay.
Still, with Avatar, a lot of people will say that it's just like Dances with Wolves or Pocahontas, and that used to be one of my complaints too. But now I've removed that from my complaint because it's like, yeah, and it's similar, sure, lots of similar
borrows
beats,
a lot of the same themes. Yep,
but it is very different. It's not like I can't put them all next to each other and be like, this is the same. anymore.
Yeah, you can't put them next to each other and say they're 100% indistinguishable, because
like
they're visually, just on that aspect alone, they're quite different.
Yeah, and though like that's Avatar is the one type of film where I can see a lot of the creativity, but I wish because to me I wish there was more creativity with it as far as the animal designs. It seemed it was nice to see, but it seemed like it was mostly just like the lemurins, it was like a lemur, both a couple extra arms,
kind of like a cat.
It's just like I kind of wish there was a little bit different design to make it look a little more just more alien, I guess. Would have satisfied me. But regardless, it still did well to have its own, I guess, skin, its own look. It's doing that type of story as the Pocahontas and Dance with the Wolves and whatever, but it does it well, does its own way. You can't watch those the same and be like, oh, this is totally the same movie. It's like, there's lots of different events that happen that make them very different.
Well, it's a very familiar movie, and it also borrows a lot from a couple of other science fiction novels from way back when. And it's just James Cameron's own mix smashing of those things and he breaks them and then puts them back together, and he creates something that a lot of people really, really loved. I was not a fan of Avatar. I felt it very predictable, but that's just me. I've also read several thousand screenplays, so I know the signs quite easier.
I still didn't enjoy it, but I removed my former complaint about it.
Which is fine, yeah. There's always something you can take from any movie, even if it's a bad film. You can learn something or appreciate something from that.
In fact, I feel like some of those are what people learn more from, in a way. At least with some of them, Batman and Robin was like a very, very bizarre type of film, but I'm kind of glad it exists. There's lots of films that are made that are bad that I'm glad that they were made anyway. A lot of people, I think, misunderstand a lot of negative critique about some films that's like, oh, you just don't want anything. It's like, or anything like this. And it's like, no, they can exist. They can exist. We're just can we improve upon that? And if not, if you do another one that's similar to that or that's goofy or it ends up being ridiculous, all right, there's how many movies exist by today after the last 100 years?
I would not be surprised if someone said the actual count was greater than our population current day.
I would have thought a low ball would be 1 billion to me.
Yeah.
So 7 billion. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, that's probably more accurate to the amount of films that exist.
Because it's not just North America that's been making films for the last 120 years.
It's
the rest of the whole world.
The whole world's been making movies.
The whole world that has the ability to do it is doing it. And there's thousands upon thousands of them that you can find and see, and then there's countless more that you probably have never heard of and might not even able to
won't
watch.
Ever come across, and they could have been fantastic and just what you want and everything, but you just couldn't. Or I don't know, that's a good point. And some of those I imagine are sometimes really short or really long or whatever. I mean, The Good, Men, the Ugly is that's a really long film to me, but
it is. But the first two films of that trilogy were much shorter.
I actually never saw those films. I saw.
Oh, you got it.
I saw The Good, Men, the Ugly only, as far as those Clint Eastwood oldies, and at first I was annoyed that it was long, but then as I reflect on it, I'm like, well, I don't think if I were to be the director, I don't think I'd want to cut any bit though, because the long moments make it it's more tense, and especially for its time and what it is. It's like, man, this is,
and it's still well paced.
To me, I guess, yeah. I don't know how to describe that type of thing, but it makes you get into it. It kind of digs you into that time a little. They're when he's just out, in the desert and forced to walk for a while. It's like, man, he looks like he is not going through fun right now.
And you don't even know if he's going to make it or not. That's the part, right? That's part of tension. And it's atmosphere, and it's effectively done. And there's a reason, it's trying to communicate with the audience on a deeper level by saying, I want everyone watching this to feel like they're in Clint Eastwood's shoes at this point, and they're going through what he's going through.
Yeah, which was kind of the feeling.
We're going to make sure that we do it in the exact amount of time so that they can appreciate it and not drag it out so that they get bored, or make it too short so they don't feel anything.
Yeah, they didn't cut away oh, now we're on to a different feeling. I'm used to that type of formula or format where it's okay, this part is over, now the scene's done, and now we're cutting over to somebody else and what they're doing. And the way it was paced in this was you're with them most of the time.
And the other part to think of, especially if you're like a filmmaker, is that no scene has only a single purpose. It has to have multiple purposes.
Yeah,
There has to be,
layers. Yeah.
not just layers. It's the sense of like every character in that scene has to have their own goal. Preferably, if you can, make those character goals conflict with each other. Make sure that the scene drives the story forward, but also develops the character in some way and communicates valuable information to the audience and plays around with things like dramatic irony is the situation where the audience knows something the main characters don't. So have fun with that if you've got that injected in there. But don't just do a scene where the person is, wakes up, opens up a book, reads it, and then goes back to sleep. It's like I mean, you can probably do a scene, but unless you have context around that to give that scene its meaning and give it multiple aspects and multiple reasons for
He's
existing.
reading his book, and it's really hot that day, so he's got to, it's got to open a window.
Maybe he wants to read the book, but
the
night light isn't working, and he can't actually read it.
Say there's problems, or there's so much of noise outside, and it's like, oh man, you just can't. The whole thing becomes him attempting to read his book, but there's things getting in the way. But that's not how it.
Or set up that he has to have this book finished and read because he's talking about it in the following morning, and it's 6 a.m. and he's still up and he hasn't done half. Like you just got to play around with those types of things so that you're giving a scene more. Like you can't just have a scene where a character gives a speech to give a speech. I mean, you go to Independence Day, you got that great president's speech talking about freedom and Independence Day, and then the right to survive, and it's all the nail in the coffin, the cherry on top of the sundae to everything that we've experienced so far. So that scene has multiple meaning and layers. It's not just about this one day and this one fight. It's about what that fight means and why it's important for us to have this fight. So again, that is part of good storytelling and economic storytelling. Is you don't just shoot a scene to have a singular purpose. And from my understanding of the Infinity War, there might be some cases of that. And if that's the case, I feel very sorry, because that's a disservice to the story that you're trying to tell and to the people working on the production. I'll have more details on that when I eventually get around to watching the Eternals. It won't be anytime soon, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. And I know you got to get going in a few minutes to join up on Nina Infinity's stream over there. But this has been good. I mean, honestly, there's even more that I want to talk about. Like honestly, just as we're talking, I'm like thinking of other stuff that would be cool.
Well, write it down, but we'll talk about it later. I always get blasted and talking to you, because young filmmakers always have the most interesting questions and takes. And if they ever come up with something that's a really good one that challenges the stuff that I have learned and known to be true, I always like exploring that, because if there is always a way to kind of break a rule without breaking the rule, it's useful to add into your toolbox.
Yeah, indeed. True that. But yeah, thanks for hanging out and chatting. That's. I hope that the people on Twitter just see your message for what it is. Just
looks that way.
It looks like it's finally starting to sink in a little. I love just now most of them are listing movies that are long, and they're like they're good, and that means you're wrong. It's just like, okay, it sounds
the point.
Sounds like they just saw the genres next to the time frames and like we're like, ha, that's one I can respond to. And like I'm gonna own him. It's like everyone's thought that tries to respond. It's like, oh, you guys just and then read the other half of the tweet, and then I don't even know if half of them know about Chris Gore's tweet. Like
who knows?
Even originates from. That's where I got the full context of. I was like, oh, the 2-hour thing, and then normalize, and movies are too long for people just unnecessarily putting things in there, and there you go.
I was just honored by the attitude that so many people inferred that I was the authority on the time frames. It was like,
oh, you can't if you set this rule, then this is what it will be. No,
no, this existed long before I did. But thank you for thinking of so highly of me, and it's like it feels nice to be appreciated for an authority, even though I have none.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're some internet dude, and it's like, well, yeah, but you're all like very passionately responding to him as if like if you don't do this, he will get his way. His evil thing will only restrict you to 2-hour films.
No, I mean, heck, I one of the guys who commented that I was wrong said that he's got a movie coming out in 2023. So I marked my calendar mid of 2023 to check in to see if his movie is released, and I will watch it. And if it is available, I will watch it. I'll give it a fair chance and shake, as I do with anything.
Yeah.
And if it does exceed, like the 2 hours as he implied, and it works, I'll give him a thumbs up. And if it doesn't, well, I'll let him know. But I'm hoping it does. Actually, I'm really rooting for him because it's you want it. I mean, you want everyone
in general you want them to
succeed.
succeed. Yeah.
Yes, I benefit just as much from their success as anyone else because I get to watch something cool.
if like 30 young filmmakers in a row, first time going, were able to make 3-hour-long movies that were really well then fantastic. Wow. Like,
yeah, great.
Geez, wow. Where's this coming from?
Your
Nice.
craft. That's amazing.
That's great. Yeah.
Can you do it again?
Right. Do it twice now.
Yeah. Well, that's the other part too.
That'll help the rule.
Yeah, like you might have that one story that, like the pacing, everything says this is exactly the length it has to be, and you're great to go. And then you might have another story where you're like, well, I got to make it 3 hours because the first one did. It's like, no, you don't. I mean, you really don't.
Exactly. But yeah, so everybody, thanks for joining us. CJH, Black Angus Reviews, Etef Wakum, Shellback.
Oh, I love Etef.
Everybody.
And I love Shellback too.
Etef's on the rise. Tim's Talk was here for a little bit. Our dude over here, yeah, he's been TikToking lately. He's blowing up over there, I think.
Nice.
Doing pretty good. Utilizing all that. And yeah, well, I want to do another conversation sometime soon. We'll have to reschedule one because, yeah, dude, I'm writing down like 5-6 things. Like, man, there's this, there's that, there's, it's almost around Christmas. So like, I was like, what defines like a Christmas movie? Like I've had these arguments with people lately, and it's like, oh, that'd be interesting to go with you and maybe Tom one of these days.
Sure.
That. Yep. And thanks, Karen, for stopping by. Last thing right here.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Go see Script Doctor on Nina Infinity's stream, and that's going on in like 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, like I retweeted it, so if you follow me on Twitter, you can find that and join us. We're going to be talking a little bit about Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Oh.